Hey Taylor, it's good to see you.
Hey, man, it's good to see you too.
I just want to welcome everyone to Taylor and Carl's Start a Podcast, episode one, which we are calling the Liquid Weekly Podcast, episode one. That's right. And yeah, we are so excited to get this off the ground. We want this to be the number one place people can go to get information on Shopify development. All your needs met here by us. But before we do that, Taylor, we should probably introduce ourselves. Who are
We
you?
should. Yeah. Do you want me to go first? I'm
Yeah,
leading the
give me
charge
your
here.
30 second. Your,
30
well,
second.
okay, no, give
My
me your whole
elevator
spiel.
pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole spiel. So my name is Taylor Page. So I am a freelance web developer, and my usual intro is a Shopify expert. Though if we're talking to other Shopify experts, I don't know if I can always say that necessarily, but that's how I introduce myself to people when I'm working on stuff. And so my background and stuff like that kind of started elsewhere. I used to be a social worker back in the day and transitioned into development, and now I get to do this stuff full time, and it's awesome. So, do we want to do like full backstories initially, or are we just gonna like this is like the
No,
intro?
we'll do the intro, then we'll do the full backstories. And then,
Okay, yeah,
awesome. Well, I'm Carl Meisterheim, and I started off my illustrious career in full stack web app development many, many years ago back in Michigan. And over the years, I've done a lot of different things, PHP, Rails, all that kind of stuff. And was doing some full-time consulting work when I really caught the vision for niching down. And that's when I landed on Shopify and really went full hog, as they say, into that ecosystem. And it's been amazing. It's been several years now. I love every second of it. And that is how I met Taylor too. So
yeah. Got her start way
yeah,
back when you like started providing a much needed service, with just putting resources together in a newsletter that's just Shopify dev specific and in Liquid Weekly. So, and I was always on the hunt, still always am on the hunt for good resources in this space, and Liquid Weekly is just has been it, man. Like there's nothing quite like it in the system. I don't know, at least that I've ever come across. I don't know if you have, while you've been putting all these resources together. But it's awesome.
thanks. Yeah. So was it almost 2 years ago, August of 2021, I think. I was trying to
Yeah.
figure out what next to do, and I get a lot of newsletters, and I really love content, and just being able to look over a list of articles and see is there anything worth catching up on this week, and not necessarily having to deep dive into any of it. And there was nothing like that I could find for Shopify, so I thought, well, I could
No.
do that. I'm smart enough to find newsletter articles and send it out. So I did, and it's been amazing not only because of following that it's built up, but also because I've been meeting so many cool people like yourself, Taylor. And if it weren't for that stupid newsletter idea that I had and just giving it a shot, wondering if anybody would ever read this, we never would have met. So because of that, what's your favorite breakfast cereal question? 2 years later, here we are talking and having a good time. And for me personally, it's been so inspiring to watch your career progression because I've been doing this since forever. It's what I went to school for. You had like a whole other career. You were doing some amazing stuff, and then you made that switch, and it really was cool to see how quickly you were able to pick up on all the Shopify stuff and begin not only learning how to do Shopify development well, but at the same time building out a consultancy. You're basically flying the plane while you're building it, and to see how much confidence you've gained, and just yeah, it's been really cool to see that over the past few years.
Well,
So
well,
kudos to
thanks,
me.
man.
Yeah,
Appreciate that. It's not possible without people like you, putting stuff together, helping people like me fumble my way through the dark, or
that's
whatever.
right.
So that was, yeah. I had never. I mean, I'd been learning web development for years, and doing a little bit of freelancing side hustle, kind of type thing or whatever. But I never thought. I had opened a Shopify store because my wife and I, have student loans, and I read about dropshipping, and I was like, this is how we're gonna pay off our student loans. We're gonna make bank selling coffee mugs. You know what I mean? Like, and so that was my experience with Shopify initially. Found out I hated the marketing and that side of things or whatever, but I really liked the code side of things. But I never thought I could get paid to do this kind of type stuff full time, like customizing themes and building out stuff or whatever. So that even how that happened was pretty wild, when I started stumbling into that. But yeah, no, thank you. It has been pretty wild to have transitioned so far from being like a social worker to a full-time freelance web developer. It's been awesome.
Yeah, and that's really kind of the vision that you and I have for even starting this podcast, right? It's one, we enjoy hanging out together. I think that's probably number one because
No.
there's only so much time in the day. So if you don't enjoy it, why do?
Right.
And two, it's having seen the power of Shopify, I guess, in each of our lives and careers in different ways, wanting
Mhm.
to create a space where we can invite other developers into that as well, equip them and enable them and have a good time doing it. We want there to be a hub of information for folks so they can quickly get up to speed and keep up to date with the latest changes, and then we can all grow and make it even better to better serve merchants and just to help the Shopify thing keep talking. So with that being said, do you want to dive in? I know you've already kind of given us the 30,000 foot level overview, but do you want to dig a little bit more into kind of your journey and some of the things that happened to you along the way to get to where you're at now?
Yeah, for sure, man. So, like I said, my background is in social work. So I've got like a master's degree in counseling psychology, and the student loan debt to prove it, kind of type thing. And so yeah, no, I actually went to school for forever for that. Was a social worker for over 10 years. Before I fully transitioned here, and in that time, while I was doing the social work thing, I really had never been introduced to web development outside of like I took like an HTML class in like high school, but it was kind of where it was so like bare bones, minimal, like kind of introduction to HTML and super super basic CSS that it was just kind of like I couldn't connect the dots, and I wish I would have earlier on in life about like the things that I was building then to what like that eventually led into what you could build, and so that fast forward like several years, I'm working on getting my master's, and at the time I was working as a social worker, working on getting my master's, and then I was also working part-time at a church. And the guy who did our website just up and left one day, kind of type thing. And so everybody was just like, just ask Taylor to do it. He's like the most technical person around, and that's kind of my skill set in some degree, is just kind of like, yeah, just throw me at it, like I'll figure it out, kind of type thing or whatever. And so it was this WordPress website. It was like hacked. It had like this, it's this church website, but it's got like these, like they were selling these Chinese, like, um, I'm trying to think of like fertility supplements. I'm trying to think of like the right like kind way to say some of these things or whatever. But like so like the site was hacked. Like obviously this was all bad, and so I learned a lot along the way about like diving into it. So my first initial introduction was WordPress to web development, and man, like people, I was just like talking to people about it, getting excited about it, and people were like, "Oh man, that sounds awful." I was like, "No, I love this. This is amazing. This is super cool." And so, anyways, that led to a long, long several years doing a bunch of different stuff in web development. I
Mostly
eventually
WordPress?
yeah, well, no. So I started off with WordPress, and then I was kind of like WordPress. Like, there's so many better ways to do things online than WordPress, and so I started moving. Then I kind of really became interested in. If you've heard of like Jamstack, people refer to that. It's like JavaScript APIs and markup, and so just building these like really fast websites and stuff like that. More like brochure type websites. You're not doing a ton on them necessarily that you can just with way tools are building up and stuff now, but so like Gatsby JS, Next.js, and stuff like that. A lot of more like React based kind of type stuff. That was what I was really interested in at the time. And so I was doing that for a while. I refer to it, like, when I started freelancing doing that, I referred to it as never making enough more than diaper money. Having a
Sure.
small kid at the time, it was like enough to pay for diapers, but that was about it. A couple $100 here and there, kind of type thing. And so eventually I did stumble into Shopify. So like I said, I'd kind of had that experience with the store, never really thought I could get paid to do this. Because from my perspective, it's not like there was anything that you really, again, I was thinking way too small about what people would and wouldn't need from that perspective. But I had a guy from a local web development group kind of reach out, and he was like, "Hey, does anybody know Shopify well enough to do X, Y, and Z or whatever kind of type thing?" And it was real simple stuff. Like we were trying to conditionally show stuff based on like customer tags or whatever. You know what I mean? Like real simple liquid stuff. And I was like, "Yeah, man, that's easy." And so I just did it. He was like, "Okay, great, thanks." Turned out it was for like this big like plus client. And I was like, "Okay, like this guy's landing jobs and didn't even know how to do this pretty basic thing in Shopify." And so like clearly there's a market or a need for this. So maybe I'll just start trying to find Shopify gigs. Because like I know it well enough, obviously, that things that somebody who's winning jobs couldn't even do, but like to me that was easy. And so when I started just doing that, it became real easy to find jobs. I say easy, and I know that's tough for a lot of people when they're first starting off. And I don't want to like downplay the fact that like I was getting and having difficulty finding jobs for like 2 years up until that point where it was like really slow, steady kind of progress or whatever. But man, it was just like when I just started focusing on Shopify, like it's like all these doors started opening. And like within a month or two, like I had to sit down with my wife and have a serious talk about like, okay, like I'm pretty sure I can do this full time because I'm already now granted this is not an impressive stat because social workers are not paid that well, but like, nights and weekends when I was working, I was making already like almost as much as I was making full time just from
Wow.
nights and weekend work. And so we kind of made a plan and I made the jump and have been doing that full time ever since. So that's my longer spiel about how I got into Shopify and now freelancing full time now for a couple of years now. And it's been a blast, man. Getting to meet people like you and the Shopify community in general. It's not this cutthroat world I kind of thought the business world would be or whatever,
Right.
like running into people like you and stuff like that. It's been really cool to meet people who are just interested in helping other people out.
That's so cool, Taylor. So when you were sharing how you first got started, you made the comment that you were reached out to by someone from a web development group. So were you like attending local meetups as a way of networking? Is that one of your strategies early on?
Yeah, so my early strategy on my whole goal was like, one, obviously get better at web development. My ultimate goal at that time was just to learn how to build apps. That was all that I wanted to do. I just wanted to build apps and stuff like that. Um, and then so I found this local meetup, and they actually did meet. This was pre-COVID, that like
That's
they
right.
would
Good
physically
old days.
show up and interact with people, kind of type thing. And I know a lot of that stuff is happening again too, and I'm so glad for it because I think that's a huge missed opportunity when it's not there. But yeah, so I would show up to these meetups and I'd get to interact and talk to other web developers, which was awesome for me because in my world at that time as a social worker, very low technical kind of type things or whatever, and again, like people would just, Taylor can do this or whatever. So I'd end up building the website or, Taylor's going to figure out how to, like, migrate these SharePoint instances and stuff like that or whatever and all this other stuff. So yeah, like that was how it first started, was starting to get in, actually talk to people who were in the industry. And yeah, I had hoped to not only learn more about web development, but was trying to get a job at an agency as well.
Okay.
So things change.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, it's one thing to start plucking away at that. It's another thing to decide that instead of trying to find a job, that you're going to start a freelance career, essentially, right? Did it just kind of fall
Yeah.
into that naturally, or did it seem like the more achievable route as opposed to trying to get employed by an agency or something?
Yeah, so I kind of looked at that as kind of like a pretty big uphill battle to try to get into an agency. Even when I was meeting and talking with people, it was kind of like the feedback I would get was people were looking for experience. Obviously, at that time, it was a little bit of a tougher job market. Where I was at that time, I was in Missouri. I'm in Ohio now.
Okay.
And so uh, at that time, I was really just looking for the experience, and I figured, if I need experience, one of the best ways to do that is start just taking on actual jobs in order to get that experience. Because I was kind of stuck for a while in that just loop of just doing tutorial after tutorial after tutorial. And at a certain point, that's just, you're not really learning anything at that point. You're not solving real world problems. And so my goal was to build up enough of a freelancing portfolio or profile that I would be more hireable, more appealing to agencies as well to hire.
Gotcha. So when you were starting to sort of level up education-wise around Shopify, where did you go to get information? Like there weren't, I mean, there still aren't, as far as I know, like books on Shopify that you go buy. No one does it anymore, right? So how do you
Right.
even figure stuff out? Were you
I
just going to
I
the
do have
website?
one book, but
Oh, do you by
that
Shopify?
was much later. But that was much later.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
But I'll have to send that to you. There's a Shopify theme liquid book by Ivan.
well, there you
I'm gonna
go.
butcher his last name, so I'm not gonna even try, man. So I'm sorry about that. We can link that up. But so as far as like, yeah, learning in general, obviously, YouTube, building stuff in dev stores. So the fact that Shopify in the
Yeah.
ecosystem, you have the opportunity to just spin up as many dev stores as necessary and playing around with themes. that was super helpful to be able to like build and break stuff in an environment that's sandboxed, right? You're not going to like totally take down somebody's production site or something. And then, yeah, after that, just, the dev docs were great. And then coding with Jan, his Shopify channel is fantastic, amazing for me to be able to like actually see just kind of like the thought process through some of those things. And he was always really great about calling out like, well, here's why we're going to do it this way, or how you kind of like move through the files to get to this. So just kind of like getting a lay of the land, that was really helpful. And then not as dev related, but Kurt Elster's unofficial Shopify podcast. One of his first episodes that I heard was actually what introduced me to Coding with Jan's channel, because Ann Thomas was on, and she was talking about like themes and stuff and how to work with them and things like that. And so that was super helpful for me as well, to kind of hear that. But yeah, other than that, I think that was the biggest thing. And we've talked about that, and that's why something like Liquid Weekly is so helpful. Was I was like really struggling to find like a good place to grab all of those all at once. You're kind of like, you're scattered, and your focus is like this wide to try to find stuff. Versus then, you created Liquid Weekly and it's just like, oh sweet, I get this in my inbox now. This is fantastic.
Awesome. That's an amazing story, Taylor. Thanks so much for going into more detail. Although I am so curious about one last thing, which is you said you got started by selling coffee mugs on Shopify. That was kind of your grand plan.
Oh yeah.
Did you have like a cool design? Was it something original that you wanted to share? Or was it just shipping coffee mugs?
It was the drop shipping coffee mugs. Like it was the most bare minimum effort you could have possibly done on, which is again why I'm not sitting here sipping Mai Tais on a beach. Because my drop, I bought into that, like, you're gonna make all this money drop shipping and all you gotta do is like spin up a store, and I obviously didn't research that well enough, and I say that at the time I unfortunately I dumped a lot of that on my wife, as far as like, because at the time I had just got like this promotion to a supervisor gig, and so like I was working a lot of hours there, and so she was primarily like running the store with next to no help from me, and I didn't want to do the marketing stuff anyways. It was just like, here, I'll set up the store and you can run it, kind of type thing. And so it did not, we made in the year, a full year, we did our whole thing. We did it like a full year. We made one sale the whole year. So
what?
Yeah, one whole sale. That's how good we were at drop shipping. So that's why I don't touch marketing and content pieces here. That's I'm a technical implementation person only, apparently.
That's
so.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. I think we all have at one time or another felt the siren song of the dropship.
It's appealing.
Some people do it and they somehow figure it out, but yeah, for most of us, it's probably not.
Yeah, some people can kill it, man, but yeah, that was not my experience. but like that was, so my side of things being pretty quote unquote untraditional at all, right? Like pretty hardcore pivot from counseling psychology to freelance web development, and your background is a bit different. I'm always envious of people in your position. It feels like you found kind of what you were wanting to do early on, and you made a lot of really good decisions early on, and you've just been on this like awesome career trajectory ever since. So I mean, is that accurate? I mean, you're too humble of a guy to say yes, that's super accurate about being amazing kind of type thing, but from my perspective, that's kind of what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor, I'll be honest, people throw around the adjective genius before, savant, all these things, the kind of feedback I get
on
a regular basis. But no. So my background, honestly, is I never had a computer. I'm kind of old, right? So I grew up in the late 80s or the 90s. That's kind of my time. And we never had a computer in the house until I was in junior high school. And I didn't know I liked computers until we got one. And my dad, I was so excited to get some games, and got the games, but I kept breaking my dad's computer because this was back in the day when you had to make like a boot disk on DOS to be able to load it with enough memory to actually run the game, right? And I kept doing things and accidentally overwriting his system files and stuff. And he was computer literate. Like the only reason he had a computer was for his job, was real estate appraising, and had some software used for that. And so I had to be the one to fix it after I broke it. but she was kind enough to let me use it, even though this kept happening. So that's how I first learned computers, is like looking through the MS-DOS 5 manual, trying to figure out, okay, how do you, from scratch, construct a config sys file and I'll execute that? Because until I figured this out, my dad can't work, and if he can't work, he's not happy with me. So
Right.
I did get that to work, and I really like this, and I just like the idea of being able to tinker with it. It was like a puzzle, and then I discovered the web, right? Because when I was first getting into this, like AOL was the best you had, right? And they didn't even have the web
Right.
at that point; it was just forums and stuff. So when early browsers came out and the web first came out, I remember being at a friend's house and like opening up Notepad and Windows, like just from memory, writing some HTML, then loading that file in Netscape, whatever it was we were using at the time. Like, look, guys, look, I did this. See how cool that is? They couldn't care less, but I was just enamored with the power of the web, right? It was so elegant and so easy to do something at that point in time.
Yeah.
So that kind of launched my career in terms of being all about computers. And so, like you said, yeah, I was kind of lucky to hit it.
Well, that's amazing though that you found. It sounds like we had similar experiences as far as like the first bit of HTML, but like
Yeah.
you caught on, you saw the bigger picture of like what this was versus someone in my position at the time. I totally missed it, and I wish I would have seen it, but you saw it.
Well, it was right place at the right time. I think was a lot of it. The other thing was, I had tried messing around with some app development, which at the time meant like Windows 16 APIs and stuff like that. Um,
Oh,
but
sounds terrible.
yeah, it was right. It was, I think, 100 lines of boilerplate code to even like get a window going. It's like it's compared to HTML. Like I wrote an interface and it's 25 lines of HTML with some
Right.
stuff. Right? So like, okay, I'm never going back to that. And then I kind of got into the open source stuff. So I was all about Linux, like by Microsoft, all that kind of stuff. So stayed away from Windows, and that kind of led me into PHP, things like that. So I went to school. I went into the computer engineering program and just went headfirst into web stuff. That's really where my passion was. And then ended up landing a job as a student. Actually, they were looking for a Linux systems administrator. I thought, what the heck? I know Linux. I'll apply. And they interviewed me, and the guy was like, well, what do you want for your rate? And I had a friend that was doing freelancing at the time, and he told
Okay.
me what he charged, which I thought was obscene. Like, I think back in the day, like $50 an hour or something. And so I just went for it. Like, I got nothing to lose. I'm a
Yeah.
sophomore in college, right? And so I said it, and I said, okay. And I was like,
You're like, what?
what? What just happened? So that kind of started my career, so to speak. I worked for them on and off through school doing web development. We basically wrote from
That's
scratch.
amazing.
Yeah, a system for them to do manuscript submissions and tracking for a peer-reviewed research journal kind of a thing.
Nice.
Because at the time they were literally like hand mailing PDFs, not PDFs, like printed copies of manuscripts of random people to get feedback, have it sent back, then take all those and mail them somewhere else to get the editors to look at it, mail all that back, right? So I think the
Wow.
cost of software development was more than compensated for by the lack of postage at that point.
Yeah, right? Like alone.
So that's kind of how I got going. And then in the midst of all that, writing PHP web apps, I made a slight career change. And similar to you, I actually went into ministry with a church that was focusing on college students, which is something that was very helpful for me as a student. And kept consulting on the side, like similar to you, social work, ministry, not the highest paying careers by any stretch.
Right.
And so it's so helpful to have that knowledge and to be able to keep doing stuff as a freelancer on the side, even if there's just one client, right? It's just with some extra money.
Right.
And then I transitioned back into freelancing full time. And I just got to share a story real quick. So one of the ways I picked up my first like client outside of that existing job was I used to go to this Qdoba all the time. You know what Qdoba is?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
It's kind of like a Chipotle kind of type thing or whatever.
Better
Yeah,
than
yeah, yeah.
Chipotle, I think. Yeah, but it's down by my house. And I used to go there to work for this one client because I like Qdoba, whatever. And they have Wi-Fi, but the Wi-Fi wasn't working very well. And I went there enough that I kind of got to know the people and I recognized the owner. And so at one point in line, I said, hey, like your Wi-Fi seems to be down. Like if you want to help with that, I can totally help you. Because I'm thinking like I just want to fix this so I can work from here.
Yeah.
Continue to enjoy
Yeah.
It's literally like, okay. And so I ended up working for this owner of a couple Qdoba franchises, like doing back office stuff. And it sucked, right? Because it's like they have a tech department, Qdoba corporate. So I'm liaisoning between their ISP in Columbus, which I think was AT&T, and their corporate office and this kind of stuff. It was such a hard place to be in. But I got their Wi-Fi fixed. I kept working from there, and that sort of opened the door for me to get into more consulting jobs.
Now, what was the compensation deal for work for getting this stuff resolved at Qdo? Do you get to like just eat there for free, or
Well,
was
that's
there
the
like
thing.
was?
I feel like again, I was lucky, very lucky, and not because I'm smart, but just lucky having that earlier experience. Because I feel like when you freelance, especially when you transition into freelancing, the biggest obstacle so many people try to overcome is asking for adequate compensation.
Yep.
They just don't feel like they have that self confidence or like legitimacy, I guess, to be paid as
Yeah.
a
Well,
professional.
talking about money is just hard. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
awkward
Hmm.
for sure. Especially
Hmm.
when there's like a friendship involved. Like this lady was a friend. Like I eat here, right?
Right.
But I also know me, and I know that I wouldn't be okay just being compensated with chips. It's like that's not going to do it. Like I've got a family.
Right.
Like
Right.
I can go buy chips. So I
Good.
asked her for what I consider to be a fair market rate, which she paid, which I think at the time was pretty good. It was I was 100 an hour or 130, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm on site. I'm here. I'm doing whatever it is you want. Like I'm a professional, and she
That's
was fine
awesome,
with
man.
it. So yeah, it worked out.
Good for you for actually like doing that too, though, because like
Yeah,
that's what I feel like. There's people that yeah, you just end up like, oh yeah, like free chips or something like that or whatever. You're like, this is a lot more than free chips, man. Like,
yep. And I know we're not here to talk about freelancing per se, although we should definitely dig into that more in other episodes. But I think for
I
me, the
agree.
metric I always came up with is, will I resent doing this work at this price? And if I
Yeah.
can't say that I won't, then I need to charge more. And if they
Yeah.
won't want to pay it, that's totally fine. There's other people out there that will do this work for them for less, right?
Absolutely.
But I just have a personal like what my what my deal no deal is on this. So,
That's good,
um,
man. So then after that, you start transitioning to like consultancy. You said too.
just picking up more work, but it was I was a full stack web developer with lots of experience, looking for more work. And similar to you, it's like, how do you get that? Like, sure, I had
Hmm.
that first client through school. I was lucky. This place at this restaurant that also was lucky. Ironically, I actually met a lot of clients at restaurants just from working out and eating.
Everybody's got to eat, man.
You just meet people, and I talk to them and get to know their needs and stuff. But I just felt a little adrift. And at this time, I actually picked up a course by Brennan Dunning. If you ever heard of him or not?
Name sounds
Double your
familiar, but no.
double your freelancing rate, I think is what it was called. And he has
Okay.
this whole thing now. He's transcended. But he had some masterminds at that point, and it was all about like just basically the nuts and bolts of freelancing and how to create a good rate and all the things you need to do to set that up. And so I ended up in a mastermind with none other than Kurt Elster.
Oh,
Kurt
that's
of the
awesome.
Psycho. Yeah. So that's when I first met him. That was years ago. And so I got to know his story a little bit and quickly saw like he was on a trajectory. He and Paul do some really great things, and I think they've done it. And it's just been so cool to watch them over the years
Yeah.
achieve it. But that's what first started turning me on to Shopify. Even was seeing how successful he was, and then when that idea of wow, I really need to niche down to focus that marketing, focus my work. I can't be broad spectrum. Let's do it with Shopify. It seems like there's a lot of opportunity there, a lot of momentum there. Chris is doing great there. And so that's kind of
Yeah.
what led me down that road. So I started doing some work for Kurt and Paul because I have all the technical background that they could use for different things that they were doing. And yeah, just kind of going from there.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, because and you did a podcast episode with them too.
I did,
Yeah.
yeah. I can't remember
And
when that was, but
yeah, you guys were talking about migrations
yep,
and that was
Matrix.
super interesting to me too because yeah, migrations are tough. And so having somebody very technical like you involved would help me sleep better at night if I was working on those or whatever. I don't touch the super difficult technical ones or
Yeah,
whatever. Like that's when I'd be calling you or been like, no, you need to talk to somebody like Carl because like that's I gotta stay in my lane. I've done plenty of migrations, but there are some I've just had to pass on because there's super technical and in depth if you're not careful.
yeah. And again, that's where I feel like I'm very lucky compared to, well, I'm not compared to you necessarily, but compared to other developers because I was just so in the right place at the right time to see the
Yeah,
web go from very basic HTML, maybe a little CSS, like that was it. We weren't even writing JavaScript, right? To what it is
yeah,
today. Like to get into it today, you have to know so much context around so many different technologies and
yep,
not necessarily master them, but at least have some proficiency to even get a simple page done, right? Whereas it used to be so simple.
yeah,
And so I'm,
yeah.
I'm very
There's
lucky
a
to
lot of
have that
pieces.
background knowledge because it serves me well.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's awesome, man. Yeah, that's because there are definitely a lot of pieces. It does feel like more and more, especially if you're kind of in the JavaScript world a little bit, it's just like there's a new JavaScript framework that comes out like every other week. Like that's the joke, right? And like it's the next new big thing. And you're just like you can't possibly keep up with all of them. So, and trying to, and I think that was the thing we both just talked about was when you finally get to the point where you're niching down and you're specializing in one area, it's so much easier to be like more focused and get more done. Just instead of trying to like, spreading this big net, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. So for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Finally, with Shopify, I just want to toss out. I had the great pleasure of actually attending Shopify Unite in 2019,
Hmm.
which is the one only one I've ever
It's
gone to, and
awesome.
that was such a great experience. And I met so many cool people, Tracy and Anne and Kelly and Kurt and Paul, obviously, and a bunch of other people that I still am in touch with today. And I think not only in Shopify did I find an outlet for my freelancing work, but I found this amazing community of developers. And I think that's
Hmm.
something we can easily take for granted because there are other ecosystems where people are not, certainly, right? Where it's not so easy to get
Hmm.
into, it's not so supportive. And so not only have I found it very lucrative as a freelancer, but I found it very satisfying as a human being to be in this place. And I want to help accelerate that. I want to help other people make that progress. And that's really what spurred on the Liquid Weekly newsletter idea, which was, well, I was kind of a test to myself, will anyone read this? Because I need like maybe 5 people I could send it to. Right? Well, those maybe subscribe, but like the idea of having a newsletter where you have thousands of subscribers, how does that happen? Well, let's see. Maybe we can make it happen. That was one, and the two was just like I want to help people. Like there's so much good stuff out there. I want to help people promote their stuff because there's folks writing things that no one knows about. There are videos being produced that no one's ever seen because they're just new or
Right.
just haven't stumbled upon the algorithm. I want to find those and expose them. And then two is I want to connect developers like yourself, like myself, with those things because man, let's learn more. Let's get better at this. It just makes our jobs more fun. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's kind of where I ended this.
Yeah, trying to make like the Shopify world or space just a little bit smaller, like to so that way, you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of like actually talk and communicate and interact with people that are in this space is and especially too like me as a freelancer I love doing that whenever I can because it kind of gets a little lonely too when you're not if you're not careful because it's not like you can you know talk to your wife and kids all the time about like oh man like I implemented this like really cool free gift with purchase promotion in the
Yeah,
cart today or whatever and like oh man like used to finally got the Ajax API for the cart API down
that's
and
right.
like I just felt so good or whatever and you're just like what like so it's cool to like be able to talk to people and for those people to get surface too that are they're trying to do the same thing kind of make their way in this space or whatever and so yeah I think it's awesome that you are promoting in Liquid Weekly content creators that way that was helpful for me.
Yeah,
I started creating some YouTube videos just because like one I wanted to kind of give back to the community a little bit and then two obviously that obviously helps out from a freelancing standpoint as well. But I really do think one of the best things you can do when you're trying to like really get a concept is try to teach it to somebody. So anytime I can you know either teach somebody about that or so I can understand it better myself, or just share knowledge or whatever. Both of our backgrounds, like ministry and social work and all this other stuff. Like I think there's this big desire to like help people. So like gathering resources and trying to help make other people more successful. I think that's something that really resonates in this community too. So um, I think it's awesome.
yeah, it's well said, Taylor. And I think at the end of the day, people in our space, freelancing, entrepreneurship, whatever, like we want to make money. Making money's fun. When you have kids and a family, like, it's not only fun; it's really important to have, right? Because there's values for it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like let's enjoy the people we're working with and that human connection, which is something that's so easy to miss in our line of work because a lot of us are remote, a lot of us spend most of our day online. Like that's where the real pleasure in life is. And if we
Yeah.
can make money and do that at the same time, let's do it. So that's just kind of
Absolutely.
my mantra. Um, well, I think we have done a pretty good job of covering each other's origin stories, which is
I think
always the
so.
favorite part. This is episode one of a Marvel movie franchise. Um,
Yeah, we'd have to take a whole Marvel movie to do it to set up the
that's right.
scene for the sequel.
But I know one of the things that we were hoping to do in each of our podcasts too is just try out talking about cool things that we're seeing happen in this ecosystem, right? So part of that is looking at the changelog, and you had something that we found on the Shopify changelog you were interested in chatting about. So you want to share what you found the other day?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we were talking about, well, for one, I think that we were both talking about that is news to everybody potentially is in preparation for, us talking about like the changelog and updates and things that we're working with in real life or whatever kind of type thing, was that the changelog has an option for you, like a tab, to actually see upcoming um stuff that's being scheduled. So I'm always just kind of surprised when stuff gets released. Oh yeah, yeah, for sure,
There
sure.
it
Yeah, that's
is.
awesome. Like there's a scheduled tab. Like you can see stuff coming up too. Like I totally missed that. I've
That's the
been
future right there. It's not
that
August
there you
1st, it's
go.
June.
Bam.
So
That's
cool.
amazing. So yeah, I think that's really cool. We both learned a little bit of something there, and but anyways, so outside of that, there's the pro tip for the day. We've hopefully made somebody's life better just from that piece. But changes to merchant asset URLs. So this was part of something that was coming up from Shopify. So instead of all of the asset URLs, so like images and stuff like that or whatever, showing up as cdn.shopify.com or whatever, and we're talking about like in the HTML, um, it's going to show up just as the merchant's URL, which is really, really cool. And so the example, they've always used Snow Devil as like the example there or what have you. But the nice thing about this is it's going to be a big win from an SEO perspective. So it's this idea of we're kind of like promoting that domain specifically kind of type thing here instead of like bringing everything in from other places. And then it's also going to help out supposedly from a performance standpoint. Now, I don't know the back end of how all that is suggested, where it's going to be more of a performance standpoint. You probably can call out maybe some of those things specifically, but I think that that's going to be awesome. That it's a huge win for merchants just all around and stuff that they won't really see necessarily, but like devs are going to obviously appreciate. Now, the only thing I think we talked about this too, where like this starts to become a little bit of a thing that like devs need to watch out for is I do know because I've worked on a ton of themes that are built by other agencies and other people, there's this tendency sometimes to just dump a hard-coded URL when you need an asset somewhere. So sometimes folks go and they'll just either dump it into files or something like that and then go grab the link and
I've
come
never done
back
that.
and just do that. No, no, I mean, I'm not talking about us, Carl. I'm
All right,
talking
all
about
right,
other
all right.
people,
Yeah.
And so obviously the appropriate way to do that instead is to call that using a liquid filter for either the file or the asset URL. And we can link up to that in show notes, right? As far as like how best to do that. And, but that'll be where people can take advantage of the, basically the performance improvements and everything else there rather than seeing that much more ugly, like non-merchant brand specific domain there. So I initially thought too that this was going to break if you had these. And so I was going through and updating old sites as well, where I was surprised. Like I've worked with this merchant for 2 years, but they had a theme built by another agency or whatever 5 years ago, and I was like finding stuff all over the place. GitHub search is great for finding that stuff. But supposedly from other partners that I talked to, other experts and stuff who talk to people at Shopify, it won't break. It'll continue to forward on. Obviously, all the old URLs are still going to work. It's just that we're not going to be able to take advantage of some of those benefits there.
That's a really cool find. Both that feature date changelog thing and also that feature. It's awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks,
and
Taylor.
I thought about it because so this was announced back in May, and I just saw yesterday, literally yesterday. So what, June 29th, 2023? I actually saw it live on a merchant store. So it's actually being implemented.
Cool. Well, I don't have something from the changelog this year, but I do have a pick of the week for myself. Um,
Nice.
James Sweeney. Yeah, I've been reading a book, which I've been trying to get back into reading ever since I had kids. Not something to do as much anymore, but it's
Mhm.
called The Soul of a
Fun
New
that time.
Machine. I think I saw this on Hacker News or something recently. And it's a true story written by this author named Tracy Kidder, and he won a Pulitzer Prize for this. I know that people listening can't see the screen, so I'm describing it, but he basically details the story of Data General when they created their next computer that was a 32-bit mini computer. This was back in the late 70s, early 80s. And it's a fascinating read. because A, it's well written, but it's a true story, and it actually goes into some of the technical implementations, but at a very high level, right? So if you're not
Yeah.
super familiar with microprocessors or data architecture, data computer architecture, it's a really gentle way to kind of see some of those issues and why is it even challenging to do this kind of stuff on that low of a level, right? We're talking about 32-bit addressing schemes and data protection, stuff like that we just take for granted today because we have so many abstractions and modern tools that are all built on top of this sort of stuff. If
Yeah.
you're interested in that kind of thing, I highly recommend it. It's a fun read, entertaining, and you learn a lot.
That's
Won't help you
awesome,
with
man.
Shopify,
I
but it's
had to say, well, I don't know. I felt smarter just you talking about that. So now I'm gonna have to
yeah.
order this thing and read it and pretend like I understand some of it or whatever. Like,
Yeah. Well, I'll be
that's
honest,
awesome.
a college education in computers was helpful, but not all that helpful. It's what I do day to day. But some of
Right.
that background was just kind of cool to know, like having to program using binary for a class, which no one will ever do ever. It's just so bad. But it's like, oh, that's how that works. Okay. That kind of stuff. This book, I feel like, is sort of on that level.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Excellent.
Great
Well,
pick, man.
yeah, where do we go from here, Taylor? What's next for us?
I think the biggest thing is just like really encouraging people to make sure they, like, subscribe, all that stuff, share with their friends, because this is something that we're going to do. We're going to keep showing up and giving people some valuable
So,
content. It's not going to always be, this is the setup show, right? This is like what it's about, who we are, and what we're trying to bring to the Shopify community, Shopify dev community specifically. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be something other people are going to be really interested in listening to.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I really hope it serves that and that people find it interesting and helpful and maybe even entertaining. But regardless, I'm looking forward to it secretly because it means I get at least an hour every week or so to hang out with you and have a conversation and catch up. So what could be better
Yeah,
than
man.
that, Taylor? I don't know.
Yeah,
Chips and
that's
salsa.
awesome. It's perfect.
That's right. Awesome. Well, guys, until next time, Taylor, it's good chatting to you. And
You too, man.
catch you on the flip side.
All right. See ya.